I don't get grossed out that easily. This movie will have nothing on me. This movie.
What is up, everybody? RandomRandomMan here. I hope everyone out there is continuing to stay safe and be well during this unpredictable time, as I am here bringing you my review for Evil Dead Rise. Now, the plot of this supernatural horror film basically follows two estranged sisters, played by Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland, as they try to survive and save their family from demonic creatures. Going into this movie, I was actually really looking forward to seeing it. And for those that know me personally, I've said this multiple times and I'll say it again, horror is my least favorite genre of movies. So to see one that I was actually anticipating was something of a miracle, at least for what this kind of movie is. This is the fifth installment of the long-running Evil Dead franchise, and to give my brief thoughts on the previous films, the original film, The Evil Dead, which was the feature directorial debut of Sam Raimi, considering the time and all that encompassed it, I think is a good film. Its sequel, Evil Dead 2, I think is even better and is probably my favorite of the original three, acting as a partial remake as it opens and then going into a full-on sequel. And then the third film, Army of Darkness, had a lot of medieval undead fun as well. Then we fast forward into 2013, a decade ago, with Evil Dead, the reimagining slash follow-up of sorts to the franchise, though it feels like a legacy sequel in many ways while not redoing it completely. And I thought that as far as these kinds of reboots go, it's one of the better ones out there, and for sure within horror, it builds upon what the original film established. So now we have, again, this fifth film, Evil Dead Rise, which again, I was actually looking forward to, as the trailer for this movie with Doris Day's Que Sera Sera actually creeped me out, and not that many things terrify me with movies. It's hard to get a scare out of me, but with how that was all strung together, plus the positive test screenings of this movie that actually led it to be released in theaters instead of straight to HBO Max gave me more confidence in the movie. Plus, there was also the South by Southwest premiere that had a lot of people buzzing about it, and I was really game to see this. Luckily for me, I was able to head out and see this thing in theaters where it is only currently available. Starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Lily Sullivan as Beth, a guitar technician who comes to visit her sister and her three kids and is expecting to be a mom herself, much to her reluctance. But then when we have demonic creatures thrown into the mix and her trying to protect herself and others, that is when she becomes our main heroine, and she really is the main focal point of the movie too. I thought she was spectacular in this. Having never seen her in anything prior to this movie, I think that she not only held her own in terms of fighting the undead, but also as somebody who has an arc that grows in becoming more motherly as the film goes on. Then we have her sister Ellie, played by Alyssa Sutherland, and both of them, I believe, are sisters, and they really are not on the best of terms with one another, despite Beth wanting to visit. And with Ellie, she's a tattoo artist, and again, the mom to these three kids. And as the marketing has played up, she becomes the main person possessed by the Book of the Dead once it becomes opened, and we see that she has so much physicality with this role. The way she contorts her body all around, how she moves, her face, that is coupled with a bunch of makeup and prosthetics. She's very expressive and quite imposing as a figure, seeing her run around this apartment and terrorizing and wanting to tear up her entire family. So that is something that I think brings for one of the more standout horror performances I've seen recently. Then we have her three kids, played by Morgan Davies, Gabriel Echoes, and Nell Fisher. I think they're all very good, in particular Nell Fisher as the youngest daughter, as this is her film debut actually, and quite a lot is asked of her to be put in a situation that a little girl would be terrified by, and I thought that she held her own for sure. All the performances here I think are outstanding. And when we get into how this movie is set up and executed, that is with how it is written and directed by Lee Cronin. Now, I've not seen his previous film, The Hole in the Ground, but having seen him now pick up the mantle of helming an Evil Dead movie, he slips right in pretty well, just from how the movie opens with a lot of shots that are reminiscent from Raimi's first three movies and Fede Alvarez's 2013 film. It feels in line with the franchise. What also feels in line with the franchise is how it is mainly set in one location. Every movie, minus Army of Darkness, took place in this cabin in its surrounding woods, but here it changes it up a bit to be in a high-rise apartment complex for the majority of it. And I think that it does a lot of things that are inventive to where characters are literally trapped within this confined space. But then there's also the open hallway and elevator with it, and the basement that is briefly explored too. While it doesn't revolutionize the series in running into a similar formula, I think that what is done in how we are set up with this family at first, and then another Book of the Dead gets eventually opened and all hell literally breaks loose, that is something that I think any fan will be easily back in for, and even a non-fan, someone who has never seen any of the previous Evil Dead movies, could get into, because there is enough exposition and explanation with this context and how this Book of the Dead is found to where we see, demonic creatures from hell are let loose, and they inhabit one person in particular that starts a bunch of this madness all around. It is the vision from Lee Cronin that is also supplemented a lot by how the technical elements of this movie really go full on in terms of its body horror, if you would. The movie is budgeted at about $15 to $19 million, and it is all shown on screen. Apparently, fake blood is so cheap to do. This film and Alvarez's previous film are more reliant on that and more of the gross out, gory, bloody, whatever kind of shock value that it is here, rather than the comedic stylings that Raimi did with his first three films. Not that there isn't a chuckle here and there with this movie, but this follows in tone similarly to the 2013 film. And then there's a lot more ingenuity and creativity, if you would, in terms of the actual violence. Again, this movie is super bloody, not for the faint of heart, and it's also gory once we see stuff get stabbed through body parts, the running around of Ellie and just what she's doing and trying to possess everyone else with her. It certainly had me wincing and unsettled by the whole ordeal, and a couple of scares were effective. I wouldn't necessarily say that this movie is scary, though not that much scares me whenever I watch a horror movie or a non-horror movie, as this movie is more so gross and nasty. Of course, there are going to be those scared by the grotesque nature of this movie anyway, so again, you have been forewarned there. But adding all that into other technical elements of the movie, the way the film is shot, it is very dark, fitting in its tone, as it is mostly set at night in this high-rise apartment complex, so it's dim in many areas, but that is offset by how there are a lot of camera choices to where everything is visual. You'll see certain things linger on in the background, or there is a certain shot that just takes with what we see in the frame. And again, it's in line with the rest of the franchise and what we have seen so far. And then just on its own, it does feel like the movie was made on a smaller size given its budget, but there's no less skill being put into it. There is even an obvious nod to my personal favorite horror movie, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. You'll know it when you see it. I mean, how can you miss it? Other technical elements here, like the original score by Stephen McKeon, I thought fit in how it feels so piercing with a lot of the more grueling moments and even moments in between, just to give us enough moments to breathe in between, I thought were well timed. Speaking of well timed, the movie, in terms of its pace, is fitting again with the rest of the film franchise as well too. At just over 90 minutes, it is quick, and it feels like the experience is really full. Also, the way this movie is cut together in conjunction with that, fitting how it is stylistically, all the visual veracity that is put in place here. There's a lot I have praised about this movie thus far, and there isn't too much I would say I can take issue with, aside from the usual horror tropes that one could take minor qualms at. The way this Book of the Dead is found and unleashed is something that you could say, oh, it's due to a bad character decision or whatever, but we wouldn't have a movie without it. But in terms of something that I found questionable, it's the way this movie is bookended with its opening and closing sequences. Both of them take place a day after the rest of the movie takes place with this whole family together. And I don't know if we really needed these moments to begin and end. Really, it is just that, and how it doesn't reinvent the wheel for the franchise, though I think fans are going to be more than satisfied with this entry and how it builds upon it and does some things differently with the change up in location, and again, all the skill behind the camera and the technical elements all around, like the superb sound design. I forgot to mention that earlier. Yeah, if you're not going to get scared by what is going on visually, then prepare to get spooked out by that aspect. I think in comparing the rest of the movies, I would say that this is on the same level or just behind Evil Dead 2 for me in being my favorite of the franchise as of now in terms of a gut reaction. Regardless of ranking, I really enjoyed Evil Dead Rise. I definitely recommend it. My final verdict for Evil Dead Rise is 4 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Evil Dead Rise, social media links in the description, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.